This is a video about the Commander General. He can potentially be a useful general. He's not as powerful as the other generals in that he doesn't have any offensive capabilities. What the Commander General relies on is keeping his men in the fight for longer and having them do more damage that way. So, what we're going to be trying here, I have sent my Hastati and my legionary cohort up against superior enemy troops. So I have put them up against troops that have good charges, troops that are very effective in terms of using their charges and fair. So I believe I have a wolf warrior in here somewhere. Yeah, there we are, wolf warriors. The devastating charge of the Swebi units, together with the fare of the wolf warriors, could be enough to break units like Hastati, and I want them to hold for as long as possible. The morale of legionary cohort isn't great at only 65. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm first going to erase the banner. That's going to increase the area of influence of my units, and it's also going to increase the melee defense. So what I want to do is I want to increase the melee defense on the charge. Hopefully that will allow my men to take less casualties from the enemy. So here we go. Raise banner increases their morale and their increases their melee defense. So their melee defense increases to 50, which is okay, not great, but okay. Now these Hastati should start wavering soon, and when they start to get morale hits for being up against fair-causing enemy units and being up against units that they are going to be losing against, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use... There you see, they are steady, but they are losing the combat. So when the Hastati start to show signs of wanting to run away from the fight, I'm going to rally to increase their morale up to 60, which is going to allow them to stay in the fight for longer. They're going to be tanking out damage for longer against the enemy units that are reliant on their charge, and this really hurts a faction like the Swebi that needs to get its charges in and that needs to break enemy units quickly, because they don't have units that are very good at staying in the fight. So here you can see the Hastati losing decisively, so they're going to pull back now, but they were able to stay in a bit longer due to the abilities being used. The legionary cohort also are not doing too well, so it's not sort of the point in showing this is that it's the effects of this ability is short-lived. It's not going to be a certain way to keep your men in the fight for a super long period of time, but it might just make them survive for a bit longer than they would otherwise. It will allow them to get a few more kills, it will allow them to hold slightly better at a critical point in the battle. And against enemy fair units like elephants and berserkers, those types of units, it can be super useful to have the ability to just boost the morale and negate the effects of the fair-causing unit for at least for a little while. So this isn't an ability that is going to allow you to win engagement super easy, but it is an ability that's going to make it a little bit easier for you to keep your men in the fight when you're up against dangerous enemy units. So being able to stay in the fight for longer with units that have high armor, high melee attack, super useful against barbarian factions, and also super useful against factions that have a lot of fair-causing units, because these barbarian units are going to get tired, they're going to get less and less effective the longer the fight goes on. And if I just can make my men stay in the fight here, what looked like a hopeless battle to begin with, suddenly it turns into something that is actually winnable. So there you go. When you have a lot of troops that you need to keep in the fight for a long period of time, or when you have enemy fair units on the field, the Commander General can be very useful. His race banner is going to increase the area of influence around the general, which means that more units are going to be inspired by his presence, they're going to have increased morale, they're going to be able to stay in the fight for longer. If you use race banner and rally together, you'll be able to rally units in a larger area. If you use Raised Banner at the charge, it's going to allow your units to sustain the charge better due to having slightly higher melee defense. Not a massive difference, but it can be a small difference. And using this at critical points throughout the battle, especially if you use low tier speed bumps, is going to allow your speed bumps to stay alive for longer, and it's going to allow your tanky units to get in and do a lot of damage, essentially having them stay alive for longer, because the units that soak up damage for them, the Hastati, Celtic Warriors or such, they're going to be able to stay in the fight for longer. So this can potentially be very useful when you're up against enemy fair units, or when you need your speed bumps to stay in the fight for a long time. Strength and honor.